tonight, well, we found Jared. Yes, we found Jared. He was MIA last Thursday, but that's quite all right. We knew that he would be back around. And this evening, we're going to be talking about what we fully intended to address a handful of days ago, and that is Joe the Whistleblower's testimony. Jared was there to actually conduct the interview, as you can hear his voice on that particular segment. He has obviously an insight. Wow, green screen looks terrible. Anyway, he's got some insights on this conversation that was recorded with Joe. And of course, I think that there's a lot more to go into in respect to what Joe was expressing one way or another, honestly. There's a lot there. The information is thick. I think we only scratched the surface, basically introducing certain topics within that interview. But it was a great interview, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. It seems like you did, based on the comments and the reactions I got behind the scenes. But again, Jared is back tonight to talk about that particular interaction. So, without further ado, as I say, right? I would like to bring on my good friend, Jared Murphy. We're going to talk about Joe, the Whistleblower. Jared, what's going on, my friend? Good to see you tonight, as always. How you doing?
Doing better than ever. How are you?
Oh, very, very good. Very good, man. You know, very quickly, a lot of us know that you went through one hell of a harrowing experience recently, physically. You had a Widowmaker heart attack, and yet here you are. Actually looking better than you did prior to having that. So
I recommend it to almost no one ever.
Yeah, basically.
But yeah, if you want to try having a full-on I had a heart attack, but that's like really secondary to the cardiac arrest, which means I had a full, for those that don't know, a full heart stop. So I tried being dead for mostly and a little bit. And so it's been a road to recovery, and I've done what most consider the reality is the impossible, which is not only did I survive, but I unfortunately, as you just pointed out, thrived. Maybe that's a plus because I'm in much better health now because I was in a coma for 8 days and in the ICU for 17. And it's amazing how much weight you can lose if you don't move anywhere and just eat a sugar bag. A nutrient bag.
I could certainly understand that. But, you know, you do look good. You know, obviously you've been given a second chance of life here in one respect or another for whatever reason. I mean, you were 45 minutes you were out, right? Is that right? Is that what I had read?
Give or take, paddled 7 times. What was that?
I said, is that what I saw in the articles that they all wrote about you?
Yeah, I was dead, basically heart stopped for 45 minutes. So there were various machines being used to give me oxygen. They were using a machine to pump my heart manually, but to get it to work on its own because it was a cardiac arrest, the basic... so my heart could start sometimes, but it would be erratic. And so the fact that I was down as long as I have, no matter what, they call it the Widowmaker because people don't recover. It was 100% blockage, so you're not supposed to recover. And then I was wheeled and walked out of the hospital in 17 days. So I went from a full-on cardiac arrest and had a heart stint in 70 minutes. From the time that I went down to the phone call to get the paramedics to me being rebooted with, you know, being paddled 7 times from being dead to get stable just to go to surgery. And then for them to identify my heart stint need and do the work, I was literally working on a front step and had a heart stint in 70 minutes.
And the fact that you were in proximity to that type of care is also miraculous.
Hennepin County Medical Center, HCMC, they dovetail and work with Mayo Clinic and other research facilities in the U of M. I can't speak for them, but I can tell you it is a research and hospital that is always doing cutting edge work. So I couldn't have really been at a better place or near enough. I mean, I would think from the time they called, the paramedics showed up in 6 minutes. I think I was in the hospital in 12 minutes.
Jesus.
So
that's response.
Yeah. So I don't think we should plan our lives around the worst events, but I was, you know, Minnesota's always been known for the Mayo Clinics and University of Minnesota. And there's been a lot of other great medical programs that are here, and there's major companies that are here, but you really can't pick a better place to be if you're slightly disaster planning for personal medical disaster. Minnesota's a good spot. The Mayo clinics for me are about an hour and a half away. So if I want to go down and get treated like some sort of king or queen, then I'm not too far from that either. But like I said, a lot of
sorry, go ahead.
No, a lot of them do work. The Mayo, like I said, though, a lot of them, the Mayo's association with the U of M and the Hennepin County Medical, you know, the doctors that are there are pretty phenomenal, the nursing and the staff. So I got, like, again, I could have had this happen anywhere, and there's a lot of great hospitals around the world. But yeah, of the best situation for the worst thing to happen, or up there with all the bad things to happen to people, I was very fortunate.
You know, before we go forward into tonight's regularly scheduled program, you know, this is something that you've mentioned, and of course I asked you when the time was appropriate, and people are now asking, of course, in the chat. I've seen this a handful of times. Sometimes we address it, sometimes we don't. You didn't have any sort of near-death experience, or even really have any recollection after you passed out from the moment there to when you found yourself in the hospital. Is that correct?
The short answer, this is like, the real answer is no, and I'll go into explaining why. The idiot or jackass in me wants to respond immediately with, like, you know, I'd make a lot more money if I'd say yes. And for a small donation, I will be able to explain my ethereal position and where I was in the quantum universe.
But did you meet the Galactic Federation? That's all I want.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So for everyone out there, there'll be a movie quote, which is, I was mostly dead. And the great thing about being mostly dead and your heart stopping cardiac arrest, excuse me, that means that I have all these cells that are not dying. I have this oxygen that's going to me, and there's artificial machines that aren't doing obviously what my heart would do and do it efficiently, but I was laying down on a set of steps, and the paramedics were there while I was still taking what's called death breaths. You know, it was like, sounded really terrible. And at the time it was thought maybe I was having a stroke. But even though my heart was a full-on cardiac arrest and I had the Widowmaker and it stopped, they had the Lucas machine, which was pumping my chest, and the oxygen on me. And at no point, when you really think about it, you could say this, like, yeah, I was dead, but my cellular system, my oxygen supply, like my body, my mind was still getting some level of support. I wasn't really dead. And you could argue maybe that all the people who have had near-death experiences, they weren't dead either. But I don't know. So maybe this is actually, now that you've asked the question, maybe I'm not thinking about it the right way. Maybe everyone who has a near-death experience is mostly dead. They're not dead. And for me, I fell down. I don't remember falling down. I don't even remember. Great thing about massive trauma, everyone, is that your brain, apparently, for a lot of people, does this magical deletion of the event and everything prior. It's a straight up shut off. It's a straight up does not exist. I said apparently I felt bad, but I have no memory of the day and the day prior and up to the event. And I don't remember anything until 2 days after I was awake, because I was on so many drugs. And they had me on fentanyl and a bunch of things. And it's to not only help you stay comfortable, but it's also to help you forget that you were in a coma and that they want you to forget, I guess. Maybe there's a conspiracy there. I don't know. But I have no recall. Just 1 minute, all the lights are off. And honestly, I can't really tell you. I've told everyone for 2 days, I don't remember the event and the 2 days prior to me having the attack. But the reality is, I have no idea specifically a date and time when my memory was deleted. But the trauma, apparently, when you get something to this level of disaster for your personal body, it's quite common for the human body, the mind, to make you deal with it literally deletes it, forgets it, forget about it. There's no recalling it. There's no nightmare of it. There's no dream of it.
Mm-hmm.
The event does not exist. So when I woke up in the hospital, I have no memory of speaking to people. Apparently I spoke to people for a couple of days and kept asking where I was, but I don't remember even doing that. And now that's a drug induced thing. But the time that the lights went out, the 2 days prior, waking up for 2 days, I have literally just no memory of the entire experience.
That's very curious to me, and yet at the same time, I understand why that might. Do you mind just turning me down a little bit over there? I can hear through the speaker. Regardless, I mean, trauma itself. It's often been said the body will shut down when faced with such overwhelming adversity, and perhaps this is a defense mechanism that we all carry, wherein, it's meant to keep us from more suffering. During that time. I mean, God, we've experienced enough as it goes, but possibly.
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's been one of the explanations given to me, was that it was something that I needed to forget, and your brain and body are very good at, helping you not just survive, but thrive. And I think that's maybe a connection that's missed with people. Your body's not just here to like have you just get by the minimum, but to also help you thrive. These are good mechanisms that are put in place so that you don't feel the trauma.
That's right. That's right. I'm looking over here in the chat here. First of all, Renee Cruz is killing me tonight. You got me smiling, brother. No, I haven't set up a date with Apollo yet to play guitar. I mean, it is definitely on the table, but I'm waiting for Travis Walton to come around. We extended a little jam session with him in Third Phase of Moon. I don't know, maybe 8-9 months ago, and we just obviously haven't all been together, but that'd be fun if we could get everyone around and just have a jam. That'd be great, and I'll let you know if we do. Don't worry. Very quickly, last question on this one, so we can move forward. Gigi Abby Lynn asks, "Did you take the jab?"
Oh yeah, I forget. People ask that. I've been replaced by aliens if I was to get that effing jab. No way. So if anyone wants to, there's no way. In fact, actually, that's a great question. I'll say there's a few questions I want to get to them on. I forgot to turn on the chat. But I will tell you guys this: when I woke up, I had a couple thoughts that kind of creeped into my head as I'm laying there with all these needles in me. And the first one was where am I? When I got that answer and I could continue to comprehend it, I'm like, I'm where? And I did what? And how long has it been? And my next thought was, oh my gosh, my clients and the people that I have business with, I thought, oh my gosh, I have let people down. I know it's obviously, I can't control what happened, but at the same time, I felt like, oh my gosh, I got to get to people. But it only took me a few more hours to go, oh my God, I was in a coma. What if they gave me the jab? I started thinking about what if they stabbed me? And then I realized the great thing about having a full-on cardiac arrest event is they don't generally give you drugs that are known to give you cardiac events.
I suppose that's a good thing, right?
Yeah. So if you're just crappy enough, they don't give you more vaccines of any kind because, you're already almost dead. So they don't want your body to overreact to anything. So giving you any kind of vaccine while you're going through a coma and recovering from a cardiac arrest and a heart attack, they don't give you any more drugs. But honestly, there was a few days laying there where you're like, oh, I don't even want to ask. I was so mad. But yeah, none. That did not happen to me. But yeah, sorry, there's a few more questions.
Yes. Well, guys, I don't want to stay on this one too long. We've only got an hour here. But Gigi Abby Lynn. Of course, I make the association here when I see that. Sorry, but I do. It says, so how does a healthy lad such as yourself have a cardiac infraction?
Honestly, that's a never-ending question. Like you said, don't spend too much time on it. But the short is, I climb, I work at my climbing gym. I was route setting and I was climbing, and I do Wim Hof, and as most of you know, Michael and I were in Belize. We went hiking in the jungle for 2 weeks, looking for Mayan ruins and hiking the jungle. I mean, I'm generally a very fit person, I think. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I survived. And I'm in a very, very unique percentile of people who not only survive, but do really well. And so I think that's to my health's credit. However, I am shocked also at the number of athletes. I'm not a professional athlete, but it's incredible the amount of people, firemen, police officers, they all are groups that have a lot of heart attacks and cardiac events. And, there was a basketball player's son. Obviously, there are reasons why an extremely fit athlete would have a cardiac arrest, which is a full heart stop, depending on what kind of sports you do. But the event like mine was likely caused by stress. And I didn't think I was stressed. That's the other thing, is like everyone has different coping mechanisms. And Michael can attest, I can juggle a lot, but I didn't think I was as stressed. But it's because I probably departmentalized stress in a way that allowed me to keep functioning under a lot of pressure. And I think that combined with the last 9 months of trying to ramp things up for actually all you listeners and fans and friends and associated researchers, I think we were trying to move a lot of balls forward, and I just kept pushing it. And I think that contributed to that stress level, which the final answer, which will frustrate all of you as much as it has me. This is the answer from every nurse, every doctor in general. Why me and not some of my relatives that are, I think, extremely less fit than me? We don't have a family history of cardiac events, but this is the short answer I got from everyone, to cardiologists and surgeons. Here's the answer: genetics. It's like electrolytes. That's what the body craves. That would be the answer. Your genetics. They don't know why. They don't know why some people have them and other people don't. I had literally a 100% blockage of the Widowmaker. It was my only defect, and they don't know why. They don't know why some people like me and, somebody who's 400 or 500 pounds, nothing ever happens. They literally have they don't know why. And so that was, there's the long and short of it.
It's unfortunate, but not unexpected. Of course, a lot of times they can only make an educated guess as to, what caused something like this. At the same time, the result is that you went through it. And regardless of the reason, which is very important, by the way, in most cases, I mean, preventative wise going forward or generationally, you have kids and so forth, it's important to know that stuff. But at the same time, it's just conjecture arenas. Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about Joe. And some of the things that he talked about in the interview that you conducted with him. I want you to take this one away. Wherever you want to start, maybe how you got to know him, how this interview kind of came about. Yes, we were filming for the Montauk documentary follow up a year ago. And, this is the idea, is maybe have him included in this. Where do you want to start with Joe here?
Let's start with dying.
Okay.
Since I tried it, I'm not recommending it, but this is what's interesting, is that obviously we have this anonymous, we have this, we title it Whistleblower. We have someone that has a personal experience with government overreach, which is just an idea. Of course, I'm not saying that's what it is, but you have a known energy producer who one of the things that we were talking about was that when I died, people asked, did I get the jab? But people also asked, hey, do you think somebody maybe intentionally did anything? It's like, I haven't produced any work or technology that would cause, I think, that kind of attention for what I do, for the research that I'm doing, and for what I up to, I don't think I'm on anyone's radar. I'm probably on a list, but I don't think I'm on anyone's radar for being someone to, hey, we have to deal with the guy. It's a problem. So I think what happened to me physically was unrelated. However, Joe's extended firsthand accounts is of being watched by the government and having a close proximity relationship to people who helped create free energy. And we got a little bit of that into the interview. And that man was on Johnny Carson. And that, and I'm saying it this way because I would like everyone to go back. If you haven't watched it, watch the Dark Hour interview or the release of that raw interview. You should listen to it again, because when you're dealing with something, whether it's MK Ultra or anything else weird going on, the question is always, are there witnesses to government or clandestine programs of people watching and listening and or managing individual people's research? And the reality is you have someone who made it all the way to Johnny Carson that has developed free energy and made a huge impact, and then got sick and died. And when you have someone who can touch a story directly and can account for voices on the telephone and people and you'll get this is worth watching in the interview, is that, well, and this is I should say listen, because it was a audio broadcast and we're going to be doing documentary stuff with it. But right away, you have Joe talking about, hey, and it is anonymous, but Joe Smith sounds good, right? So the reality is there are people on the phone telling him to get off the phone. And well, that's not an insignificant thing. And what about, it's not about spying for another nation or anything else, but it's directly about something that affects the commercial. Yeah, it affects government, but it's private commercialized energy resources. And they care enough to not only monitor the scientists that are experimenting and doing the work, but they care enough about the results that you have, they're dead. Which part of what this interview was about was figuring out what are the motives behind I think a key point, and I know that we'll explore all this and we're doing a documentary, but when we look at MK Ultra, I think one of the things that I thought Joe contributed to was really that there are organizations and people invested enough in ideology that the greater good matters more than individual freedom. It matters more than individual, that in practice. And the question is, the intentions, do the results of what they're experimenting and doing to individuals, does it really outweigh, do the needs of the many really outweigh the needs of the few? And here's right away what impacted me was the relationship to having direct contact with people telling you to get off the phone, monitoring your phone calls, and right away, like having proof that you have someone saying you don't get to think what you think, you don't get to have what you have, and no, this person just got sick and died. And that was a very it's a very frustrating situation that I think we spent. There's a lot more, I think, to discuss and reveal about the interview, but I guess from a starting dark standpoint, when you think about death in reference to manipulating things, like something as obviously free energy is not a simple thing, but being able to manipulate people individually down to the point where there is money and resources set aside for this that are not voted on, not judged on, by anything openly is, well, terrifying.
But again, you mentioned MK Ultra. I think this program is so significant because it's something that we can prove occurred. We know for a fact that it happened. We know how it happened. We know the players that were involved, most of them. And of course, we know about the victims. And, the condition that they were left in, after a certain point was just like a vegetable. And to believe it or not,
sorry.
you know what I mean? Some of these, listen, you were for a week, some of
We're not
these,
talking about Michael.
I had to run through the garden real quick. Okay. Some of these
Yay.
victims that, the families, are still hanging on. Some of them actually still around, have been seeking some sort of compensation from whatever government faction for this type of testing that was done non-consensually. And wouldn't you know that there are some very rigorous standards that, basically if you're not a vegetable, if you're just 1 carrot shy of a vegetable, you're not getting anything. And those who do get something, it's about $100,000, which, in terms of ruining somebody's life and taking away a loved one from their families, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically, because people did die in these programs as well, it's just appalling the way that that's being dealt with. But again, the whole point here is that it was acknowledged. There were hearings on this in a sense, and people were allowed to speak up and talk about these experiences that they had. So what MK Ultra does is sort of lay a foundation for projects that we hear about that just seem far too fantastic, but yet we know that a program like MK Ultra was instituted, and at the very core of the majority of these other black projects is MK Ultra. It's mind manipulation. It's reprogramming. It's breaking down the individual to build them up the way that they see fit. Problem with MK Ultra back in the 50s, of course, as this began, probably started earlier than that, but at least on record, I think it was 52, 53, if I'm not mistaken, was that they were able to break people very efficiently. They just had no idea how to put them back together. But apparently, as we talk about the Montauk Project, that was the foundation, and they did figure out how to put people back together, and they did do it with electronics and technology, as well as other meditative and esoteric means, or at least what would be considered esoteric to us when we talk about this.
Do you think from the participant from the perpetrators of this, of what you've experienced, Michael, I'm just curious, do you think there's any follow-up in an organized public or open government organization that could hold future projects like that? I mean, it sounds like such an endlessly unanswerable thought, but can we hold the people who were there, the responsible, more accountable? And I just don't personally, it just racks my brain as to how stuff like this could continue.
Well, I mean, the honest answer is that there's no proof that these things are even happening. So when you look at somebody like Preston Nichols or Al Balick or even Duncan Cameron, who, had a certain role in the Montauk Project, to whatever degree that they did, actually being some of the aggressors and people that were performing some of these reprogramming stints, if you will, it's criminal what they were doing. But, it's sort of, when Preston came out and said the way we were reprogramming kids was to do something assaulting, okay, in a sexual fashion, but keep it YouTube friendly here, that immediately pins you down as a you-know-what file, okay? Immediately. Why would anybody outright say, this is what we did, this is what I did, this is how it was done? And incriminate themselves the way that he did if he knows there's no evidence of it. Nobody can bring him to court because that project never happened, or the people that were involved had no real affiliation with, whatever branch, was being accused of performing such acts. So I think that they're protected by that anonymity when it comes to the programs.
Oh.
And, it's unfortunate because even in ufology, there's been a lot of talk lately about going after some of these people behind the scenes and putting them on trial, calling them criminals, and putting them away if need be. But in order to do that, you have to have the names and you have to have the withal to move forward. And some of us in ufology do have that, but it's ufology. It's a little bit different. It's more tangible than some of these black projects, even though they cross over. So it's a brief answer to your question, I guess.
It always seems like it's departmentalized and it's not the same people, but it's frustrating to watch. Again, history keeps repeating itself for some of these programs, and there's no one in elected office that there's no committees that oversight this. It's frustrating.
No, it's not the immediate government that we see in front of us, even though some factions of it are in part, some of that involvement in part, but really majority of the times this is done by our shadow governments or other black factions within the Air Force, other military branches, whatever. This isn't something that even the president or presidents are aware of in many cases. However,
no,
as you'll see in the upcoming documentary, there are people on the inside, the CIA specifically, that will walk around and they'll use certain verbiage to kind of figure out what's going on within other endeavors, but they're very smart about how they talk about it, because otherwise they could be in a lot of trouble. And I'll just put it that way. But I have an individual there. You'll see him talk about this a little bit in that documentary. But I thought that was curious. I mean, it seems that everybody knew about it when it was happening.
It would be different if these programs, I feel like if there was some sort of actual benefit, but I think that it's not a catch-22, but I do feel like when you create a program that ultimately doesn't help everyone, and you have a program that is designed, that's supposed to, in a protectorate way, or it's supposed to support everyone, and it ultimately doesn't.
Well, I don't even think these.
I may have lost you, Michael. Apologize. I don't know if Michael's on, everyone.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Now you can. Well, that's weird. I noticed it lagged pretty hard there for a minute. Regardless, what I was saying was I don't think these programs were really designed to help anybody. I think more or less they're there to support somebody's idea of experimentation or progress. And, again, because this is non-consensual and these people work above the law, they remain untouchable. And there's really little we can do to go after them outside of, the morality of it, which really, again, doesn't add up to much. There's nothing we can really do. But you talk to some of these victims and some of them acknowledge that the programs are still happening today. I'm certain that they are. Why would they stop? They would just transform, they would change in one way or another to fit the necessity of the era. So, in the 50s, 60s, we had certain ideas about mind control. We understood vacuum tube technology. Essentially, the Montauk Project was based on vacuum tube technology because vacuum tube technology has a quantum element to it, unlike, some of the digital highways that we work with today. It's a much different, more analog state, of course, that's closer to physicality, but apparently is a bridge between physicality and the non-physical in the way that it's expressed. So, Joe mentioned, I want to talk about that free energy very quickly here. I remember back in the 90s seeing videos of cars that ran on water, cars that ran on hydrogen, cars that ran on helium. I think there were a couple other mediums that they were using. I just can't remember what they were. And of course, these were these underground VHS tapes that you would get from within a certain inner circle. And these people that were involved in these type of creations, they disappeared. Now, well, in most cases, I say 99% of the cases, these people disappear. Maybe the 1%, they just ceased activity and research altogether and now living complacent somewhere out in the woods of Georgia, whatever the case may be. I forget where I was going to go with that. But, excuse me. So when we look at some of these people and see what they were doing independently as engineers, and then understand that free energy as a technology has been around. I mean, it's been said since the 50s. We've truly understood free energy and how to build free energy devices. This stuff is being suppressed. At what point, Jared, do we get in our immediate future here where we say, you know what? We can benefit from this one way or another. And maybe some of these people that are in charge could make a little bit of dough on it, right? So, I mean, you pacify that end of things and yet bring in a technology that makes energy purchase so obsolete. Everybody has got access to free energy in one shape or form. Why won't they let us change the landscape of our cultures and our time with this type of device outside of the fact that they can't make money on it? Why?
Because I think ultimately the power structure is based on us not having independence. Mm-hmm. Because it seems very simplex, but the idea of they think that there has been a classical way to control the general population in general. Just it's a system that works. But the idea of who likes the unknown? So I think it's not just a concept, but the idea of, well, if energy is free, that was a core competency to us keeping a level of dependence on the majority group of people. If, like the internet, I mean, the explosion of new ideas and the sharing of those ideas, that's what social media, and I think one of the benefits to the internet in general, if we look at the development of technology since you and I grew up with the internet, no internet, and we're part of that generation. There was no internet, then there was an internet, and then it's turned into what we're all dealing with in a chat room now. The reality is that if you gave everyone free energy and did it in a way that was good for the environment, then I think you're well on the way of a very dinosaur, Jurassic, and not just in size, I mean just an ancient mindset, methodology, clandestine group that has no idea how to be that again, life may not, I mean, esoterically, life may not be about power and control. And I don't think they identify, I think anything that creates independence is systematic of losing something that is non-existent for every man of power, literally since prior to the pharaohs and Sumerians, is that the power and control that they're executing is not the core of who and what we are as a collective, as a people, esoterically or physically. It's not one religion. It's not one thought process. It's not one language, but there is something that connects all of us. And it's not something that I think this group or a lot of people fully comprehend or understand, because we're buried in the weeds of, I got to pay for energy. I can't think about this cool invention idea because I have to go to work. Whatever that is, it's these fleeting moments where, from quick, short 10-second videos to the websites that have produced, I think, intelligent information for all of us to consume and then apply. Even the time to research those things are limited for each of us. So it's like, no matter what balls we're juggling, that even if we lay down, well, I have like life-changing important ideas, I think we all get stuck. I mean, that we get into the semantics of why we get stuck with 40, 50 hours a week dedicated to life, community, human changing things. But I think all of that plays into longer than the hour we have to talk.
Honest, of course it does. But listen, you said something that kind of jogged my memory here, and I don't mean to get too off course with this, but I just saw an article today. Did you see that 110 million year old dinosaur mummy that was found? I think in Canada. Yeah, no. They had to dig. Oh God, I forget how deep it was into the earth that they dug, but it was far, very far down. I have to look back at the article. Yeah, and they had a picture of this thing. I've seen this dinosaur before, represented in illustrations and so forth. I forget exactly what the name of it is, and I didn't. After I read the article, I meant to look it up further, but got caught up in something else, and I was distracted. But you just jogged my memory. Now, long story short, thing's huge, and tissue is still
Wow.
intact. I mean, the thing, you can see that it's a dinosaur mummy. Wherein I don't
Oh,
think we've
that's
ever actually
wild.
found something like that, right? We found fossils galore, but never a mummified 110 million year old carcass of a dinosaur. So
We found cartilage.
I'll just
Yeah,
send that
no
to you.
cartilage and some woolly mammoths that are like the oldest, I
Mhm.
think, was 38 or 42,000 years old that they were able to find that they could say soft tissue. And then in some, there was some cartilage and some remnant, not fossilized or, not. The whole argument is that any bio remains after 35, 40,000 years should not exist. So that
Mhm.
was one of the argument for the people for a young Earth, is that if you have a soft tissue, it has to be less than 40,000 years old, and therefore dinosaurs walked amongst humans. Dinotopia.
Here, look at this. Okay, here I got a picture of. Hold on, I'm gonna bring this up real quick. I've always loved dinosaurs, and I think most people growing up have absolutely loved dinosaurs. But the fact that we're still continuing that research and making progress within the field leaps and bounds is absolutely fascinating. I know they're trying to resurrect some of these older species, and yes, apparently they have the means to do that. They're probably doing it as we're speaking, but we
Yeah.
haven't seen that yet. Let's see here. Share screen.
Yeah, I'm look, 110 million year old mummy. I'm all about.
110 million year old mummy. Yeah. There it is. Look at this thing.
Holy cow.
Right?
Wow.
And there's some other shots of it here. Let's get a close up. Look at this.
That's amazing.
Well, at least one thing we know for sure is that artist rendition of some of the dinosaurs, maybe it wasn't off as much as we thought it might be. Because
where does it say where they found this? Not the
it was
oil
in Canada.
sands of
It was in Canada.
Alberta.
It's a nodosaur. Skin and guts intact. Let's see here. Alberta.
Oh my god.
No, he's in the dinosaur. I'm sorry, he's in the museum in Alberta. Says you can't even see its bones. It's so intact. I want to see exactly how far they had to dig down. Hold on, let me see if I can see that real quickly. Oh my god, I can't even imagine. It was discovered by accident. They were miners that were digging. It wasn't even something premeditated or intentional. They just stumbled on it.
Renee Cruz just said about extraterrestrial alien dinosaur. Wasn't that a TV series for a while where dinosaurs actually came from another planet? They were really advanced. I'm trying to think what that show is. I wonder if anyone remembers. Gosh, I'm blanking on it.
I want to look at one more article here, but I don't see it. I don't know. There was that program, Dinosaurs.
Not the mama.
With the baby. Yeah, right, exactly.
Not the mama. No, not
shit, I don't know
not the
it is.
mama. I just actually rewatched the best of Not the Mama. I just can't believe we're looking at a dinosaur. I mean, it's exactly how we've like artisted renditioned them, and it looks just like it. It's crazy.
That's exactly what I'm saying. We're not so far off with what a T-Rex looked like with its skin on, or pterodactyl, or something along these lines that we've been researching for a long time. We have the skeletons of these things. Maybe we're not so far off. Anyway, I didn't mean to get too far off topic, but I find that very, very fascinating. And
yeah,
when I was looking at that photo for the first time, I was having difficulty wrapping my mind around the fact that I was looking at something that was 110 million years old.
Yeah.
We live to 100 if we're lucky, 110 million years. It just blows my mind.
I can't believe it stayed intact. And why were they digging? And why were they digging where
coal
they were
miners.
digging? Why? What?
Coal miners. They were just digging for coal. And yeah, as I mentioned, it was down quite some ways. I'll find the original article. It did mention it there, but
that's another reason to support fossil fuels. We got to find fossils. Huh?
Next thing you know, you'll be sticking dinosaur mummies in your gas tank. God knows. You know what I mean? Any
Oh,
natural resource, right?
can you imagine what that would cost per gallon?
At 110 million years old? No, dude, I think it might break the wallet a little bit. Certainly wouldn't be
Yeah,
economical.
the next 380 miles will cost you 287 million.
Much beyond the worth of your vehicle and possibly your life, but regardless. Okay,
What
so we
would
got
your
about
oil
15
change
minutes
be at
left.
that point?
Yeah, Jesus, dude, I couldn't even imagine. Just be snake oil.
Yeah.
So we got 15 minutes left. What else did you pull away or take away from that interview as you performed it with Joe that kind of made you think after the fact? Or did you sort of cover everything that you had? Because you asked some fantastic questions and follow-up questions as that interview, went forward. I was very impressed with the pacing of that and the content of what you were mentioning there.
Yeah, you heard Michael. It was impressive.
Mm-hmm. Listen,
No,
I'll push the envelope, okay?
I'm glad we're circling back from dinosaurs to actually talk about this, but
I try to stay on track. You know how it goes.
Well, it's the more we connect with people to get the information out there that these programs not only exist, but there are people at levels enforcing directives and rules that involve right down to people's lives and livelihoods. I think what struck me most about talking about it is that this is getting too big and we're getting too connected through these, chats and the availability of those that want to do it. You don't really have to dig hard, not just to cynically come up with some conspiracy, but to legitimately come up with things that are off. You don't have to dig hard. And then the quantity of the people affected negatively or neutrally, or whether or not it's positive, you have a direct line now to be able to trace the outcomes of some of these, again, unknown individuals that are monitoring. They're doing their job, and they might be so departmentalized they don't realize how bad their job is or how they're negatively affecting things. But this is one of those cases where Joe could speak to it, and he could speak to a personal experience. It's not just something that somebody else said. So the entire time I was doing all the dialogue with everything we were talking about, I got it in my mind that here's someone who's literally got people on the phone telling them to shut up and get off the phone and keep the line open, and they need to know what other information is going on. And in this case, it's about fossil energy, non-fossil energy. And
who was it that was asking them to get off the phone? Do you recall?
What was that?
Who was asking him to?
So one of the things, and again, this is something I think is still worth everyone's time to go back and watch the Dark Hour, like us doing the audio of this interview. But as even a child, he had always felt that the phone was being listened to. And while he was on the phone, there was one point in a window of time in the evening that was usually, for those of you who don't know what it's like to only have a regular phone, if you're young enough to have grown up with a cell phone, you would have had to worry about this. But there was a time where your only phone was the home phone. And when you were on it and you're talking to your friend, the kid, eventually, if dad wanted or mom wanted to make a phone call, well, you got to get off the phone. So there's only one phone line. So at one point, we talked about in the interview, is Joe's on the phone and someone clicks on and he just assumed it was his dad saying, okay, son, you need to get off the phone now. They needed that line open, but it wasn't his dad. And it was someone else that was on the phone monitoring the calls, and he was taking too much time away from having that phone line open for the calls they did want to listen to.
So that lends a little bit of clarity.
Yeah, he literally got told to hang up the phone by a clandestine human being listening to the call. And that means all the phone calls were being listened to. And again, we'll expand on this in a documentary, but there's definitely people monitoring private citizens for depending on the reasoning, it's being done, and clearly by organizations that it's not just the movie FBI or CIA. It's clearly something's being done for reasons we don't get to have answers to.
It goes into the whole idea of the citizen having a certain sense of free will and the freedom to live without certain influence. That gets thrown out the window in so many examples. Especially within the last 60, 70 years. We're being monitored for one reason or another, and I'm not talking about people like yourself and myself, Jared, where we're deep into some of this stuff here. We're finding things out behind the scenes that perhaps even we can't express publicly because that puts some sort of jeopardy within what we're doing or who we are, and so forth. We talked about this at length, and we'll continue to talk about this, of course. But for the common person who doesn't necessarily have anything like this, wants to live a straight arrow sort of what we call a normalcy, if you will, in way of life. Yeah, they're also being monitored. If it's not some type of control, societal control, what could it be to give them a reason to monitor the average person?
Well, in this case, it had to do with energy technology, and it was very usable energy technology that got proved in public, and the resources that, in this case, his father could provide. The relationship to helping the science of that free energy was clearly an interest of people that clearly have a lot at stake with other mummified fuels. Could work that dinosaur back in here, huh? Sorry,
I love it.
Let's have a little fun, guys, right? But yeah, I think there's not we may not see a clear path, and I don't think this is good for anyone who's generally paranoid, which it's only paranoia if you're not really being listened to. But I guess where I'm going is that you might not be the target or the source of what might be the attention for the monitoring, but you got to wonder not only who's individually collecting the information thinking that, well, I'm just doing my duty, I'm just following orders. We know how dangerous it is to just follow orders. But how much of what we're saying that we think is day-to-day minuscule, meaningless things have to do with like a Montauk size crowd manipulation or directed thought initiative? So how much is the information that we're being, whether or not we're aware of it, how much of the information being collected has to do with them ticking off a box going, oh, this frequency, this energy, this was effective. People have a general vibe, they have a general feeling, and things that we think are completely innocent might be, a collective group statistical test result of one of those frequency energy tests. I'm not
very well may be.
Huh? I'm not being conspiratorial.
No, but you might be onto something there. And I think a lot of people in a similar fashion, not everybody, of course, but I think people are generally skeptical when it comes to some sort of industry or resource that, we know we could procure it a different way, or we know that we could work with it in a different fashion if it was out of the hands of those who intend to keep it controlled, when it very rightfully belongs to everyone. And that goes for free energy, and that goes for your own mind. If it's not consensual, that's what it is. You didn't consent to it, and yet you're still being utilized in one way, shape, or form. That's why a lot of these survivors are so pissed off, because nobody was given a heads up. Nobody was asked. And of course, if you want to be surreptitious about things, then you're just going to take what you want to do. And if you think you're above the law, you're just going to do it without reprisal. So,
or right out in the open.
Get it. Yeah. Huh?
Yeah. The music frequency 427. Mr. Catfish.
Thank you, Mr. Catfish, for the $5 super sticker. Thanks.
How we get, I guess we're not bartenders and we can't tap on the bar, right? because that would be like,
Yeah.
but I don't think that if you, like the Montauk or a large crowd manipulating whether it's a device or like a frequency change, and we talked about that. And I again don't want to keep going over although we're talking about the documentary and in this case the interview with Joe. We talked quite a bit about, for those of you who aren't familiar, our frequency based change for the harmonics of how we listen to music and our brain entrainment around that switched hertz. And why would we do that if it wasn't about general crowd, really mass manipulation of the brain? And it's fascinating to me to see that in action, because I think our current understanding of the human brain, and I think we've talked about this before. I know some, locally here, there are some very famous neurosurgeons that are some of the most brilliant minds on the human brain right now, and they'll hold up their pinkies and say, "This is what we know of the human brain," like that much, just that much. And so it's incredibly, the arrogance and the hubris to think that we know enough to manipulate either the weather or the brain, and that we're going to have good results, or like whatever we hit the thing with. And at this point, you might as well describe it as a sledgehammer. There's no subtle manipulation of our mind and our body and and collectively, I think, even if you're part of a clandestine organization, you understand the ancient past and you have more of the pieces of the puzzle. I don't think it's well understood I don't know, but I'm suggesting that the level of coherent information about the functionality of our ancient biotechnology, from our minds to like external things like terra preta that I talk about, and not aliens, our engineered soils, it's pretty clear that there was a society on this earth that had bioengineering and technology that did dovetail with our physical existence. We don't have that anymore, and I don't think there's any one secret organization that has it figured out. So it just, again, goes back to blowing my mind that it's like you're willing to F with a few people's or break people apart in Montauk, or hold on to these primitive control systems because you don't see how we're all going to make it, when you don't know the entire history, or maybe they do know more about the cycles of history. And the reality is that I think collectively we would all be doing better if we all had some more collective agreement about how we're not going to make the mistakes we made in the past. Maybe
I would have to agree with that. And of course, there's plenty more that I could add to this, but unfortunately, we are at the top of the hour. And very quickly, let everybody know where they can find you, because I'm going to sign off quickly tonight, folks. Just very quickly to mention this, I said it a couple nights ago. I'm going on Spaced Out Radio tonight with Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress.
All right.
Is within an hour. So if you'd like to join us over there, come on over to Spaced Out Radio. We'll be hanging out talking about Montauk and negative entity attachments, and perhaps a little bit more. But where can we find you, Jared?
Oh, yeah. So everyone, I was out because of that whole heart attack thing, but notaliens.com. That will be getting more facelifts and more updates. I have a members area. Please join. Very helpful. There'll be a lot of new things added and other things. My new book, Not Aliens, which again has been in a revision for about a year, and new addition to it. That will be coming out soon, but YouTube Not Aliens or notaliens.com right now. And you will continue to see new updates now that I'm running almost 100%. So thank you, everyone. And thanks, Michael, for having me on.
Excuse me. It's always a pleasure, Jared. I mean, we've been doing this together for quite some time now, and I don't see any let up in the near future. We make things happen, brother. And of course, everybody within these circles, Third Phase of Moon, Goof On, Dr. J Radio Live, Paul Asteria, Laura Eisenhower. I mean, all these people within the immediate circles, they're all doing something. I stay away from Linda Moulton Howe a little bit. I forget who said that, and I think it might have been you, Gigi. She's not my cup of tea, and you know what? I can't say some things on air, but regardless,
Dark Hour throwing some shade.
I let her stay in her corner, and she can do what she wants to do because she's happy doing it there, and I leave it at that. But Jared, once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I will certainly be talking to you sooner than later, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right, brother, I'm going to take you off for a moment, just close out, and
I will sit here.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
For just a moment there. Very good. All right, folks, I know that we could keep going on this. We could keep talking about what Joe had to say, and we will. Maybe there'll be a part 2. Maybe we'll actually sit down and just address certain bullet points within that conversation. We've got a lot we got a lot working on the table right now, and it's going to be a fantastic fall. So stay with us. I'll be back next week. I have Harry from the Bridgewater Triangle Paranormal Investigators. He'll be joining us again. This guy always seems to have a very interesting theory that he'll pitch to me, in a personal conversation, and it's really interesting to see his perspective and where he draws some of these angles out. Very analytical in his thinking, and yet he's still, much outside of the box. Absolutely love what he presents, and he will be coming on to talk a little bit about a particular theory he has, of course, involving a very specific haunting down in the Bridgewater Triangle here in Massachusetts. Folks, stay explorative and all that. Sorry, I'm getting a chat here. Oh my goodness. Yes, I see your comments on Linda Moulton Howe. Okay. Guys, listen, stay vigilant, stay explorative, and as the late Damian Gray would say, question everything. Thanks for being here, guys. We'll see you again next time. Ciao.